Happy New Year to you guys over here too. No, glad you're here. My name's Chris. As Garrett mentioned, we're just so happy you're part of our church this evening and you joined us. It is just a privilege to have you here. Welcome. We're starting this new series called How to Keep Charge, and because we know life is draining. I mean, it's just the way it goes, isn't it? And sometimes we just have to stop and look at what are the activities that you and I need to do to make sure our battery of our life stays full. So we're going to kick off this series and look at that. And if you apply, here's what I believe. If you take what we're going to talk about tonight, the next several weeks, through the month of January, and you start to put these things in your life, I just think it's going to work better. You're going to be able to go through life with this not being the picture of your life. But before we jump into that fully, I want to take just a couple minutes and just talk about some things that really have to do with our church globally as we stand here at the beginning of a new year. And we're thinking about always, but especially in transitions like years and things like this, what is God calling us to do? And we've been talking about in our leadership teams and in other places, what is God calling us and telling us to do in 2020 especially? If you've been here recently, you've heard us talk about the corner, the property that we've purchased, we're in the middle of remodeling, that's right next door to NAU, in which we feel like God is saying He wants to use that place, that physical location, to help 500 students come to know and follow Him. Our children's ministry is incredible. It's firing all cylinders, and it's preparing to share the love of God, the love of Jesus with more children than it ever has before. We made a decision several months ago that our future campus, our future expansion in buildings, all of those programs wouldn't just be designed and looked at of what could be good for all of us who are part of this church or who attend, but what really does our community need? And so we've decided that we're going to go in the direction in that expansion of a community center that we think will benefit thousands, maybe tens of thousands of your friends, of my friends, of our families, of us, our coworkers, our neighbors, even our neighbors we don't like. Like, God's called us to help everyone and to connect with them. Kevin and I on our staff, we've already met with our development partners, over 40 different nonprofits here in just northern Arizona, Flagstaff, Coconino County, several of our city leadership, county leadership, officials, and the unanimous, I mean this word, unanimous excitement for this project, for this future community center and its potential impact for good in northern Arizona. So many things that you get to be a part of here in 2020. And I truly believe that God is calling us to navigate some uncharted territory this year. It's uncharted for you. It's going to be uncharted for me, for our church as a whole, that God is asking us, Jesus is calling us to create new trails, new pathways, so that one person at a time can come to follow Him. Why is that? Why do we need to go in places we've never been before? It's because of this. We will do. This has been the stance of our church since it started 35 years ago. We will do whatever it takes to help one more person follow Jesus. God has given us incredible things that He's called us to do. And we have so many goals and dreams for this new year as a church. And they're so exciting. I wanted to share with you one specific goal. And you're going to hear about all these things as time goes on and the year unfolds. But I want to share with you what I believe is the most important goal that He's put on our hearts. It's that 125 people will decide to be baptized in 2020 because of what God has used our church to do in someone's life. In 2019, the year we just finished, you remember that, right? Last week. Remember that, you guys? In 2019, you may not realize this, 106 people made the decision in their life to be baptized. Kids and students, young adults, all of us. 106 people. You should probably, this is the point where you'd clap and go, like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's so worth celebrating, isn't it? In fact, I did this last service. It's kind of spontaneous. I'm not going to ask you to say anything or like do anything. But if you're one of those 106 people, you're here in this service, there may or may not be some of those folks. But if last year, 2019, you were baptized here at CCOF or connected to our church in some way, would you just stand up for a second? So we just see some of those folks. They're okay, a couple people stand up. That's pretty awesome. Okay, just stay standing for a second. You don't have to talk or say anything. If you, in the last 35 years, any year before that, have, because of this church, made that decision like these guys did to be baptized in our church's history, would you stand up and just join them for a second? There should be a couple more, right? I mean, like, that's an amazing thing. Like, praise God for that. You guys can have a seat. That's so awesome. We're just simply asking God to do that more. We've never had 125 people baptized in a year in our church's history, and that's just where we feel like he's calling us to go next. How will that happen? We're going to pray a lot. And the other thing, and this is all of us, like, this is our goal as a church. It'll happen because you bring a friend. Because your coworker who needs to find and follow Jesus, you're gonna invite them. Or maybe somebody in your family says, hey, that rooted thing's interesting to me, and you're going to go with them for 10 weeks. Because that would be worth it, wouldn't it? It's going to be your neighbors. It's you doing, just like I said earlier, whatever it takes for one more person to follow Jesus. That's how this goal of 125 baptisms will be accomplished. It's you bringing a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, a family member, that maybe it's your spouse you've been praying for a decade, that they would come back to know God, to follow him. You and I are going to bring our friends. We're going to make those connections. And we're going to let Jesus do what he does, the work in people's lives. So we're going to pray for that. And then we're going to jump in to this idea of how do you and I stay fully charged. Pray with me. Jesus, I'm so grateful for the people in this room and the people that stand up all weekend, just remembering the time that they obeyed you in baptism, that you have used our church in so many lives, thousands of people's lives, in all kinds of different ways. And Jesus, we're asking you to do that even more in 2020. We're asking boldly that 125 people would make the decision and be baptized into your kingdom, accepting the free gift of grace you give us. Jesus, make that happen, and let it be our friends. Let it be the people, all of us in this room right now, God, that we would have the privilege to watch or to even baptize a family member, a neighbor, or coworker, that person we care so much about, who needs you so desperately. Use us to do whatever it takes to help one more follow you. Jesus, we ask this in your name. And everyone said, amen. So Jesus says, when he's here, he says this, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. If you're here at Christmas Eve, I mentioned this for a few minutes. I think this is such an interesting statement that he said this, and we know he said it because eyewitnesses recorded it, told us in his biographies, the Gospels. Why would he say this? Why is this important? Because I think you're probably like me. You and I need help with living life to the full. Living life the way it's supposed to be lived. And some people call it abundant life. Why do you need help with that? Why do I need help with that? Last week I had someone come over to my house and he was going to help fix some things around my house, some like construction kind of repair projects and stuff, and he showed up with a whole bunch of drills to do some of the work, required that, but he forgot all of the batteries for his drill. So I was like, dude, you're setting me up for my sermon. This is good. Thank you. And so they're not very helpful. You know, if you've ever tried to use one of these without the battery, it doesn't work. But I said, hey, it's okay, man. I've got one of those too, because I'm a man. So you have to have one of these, like to be, to get your man card in northern Arizona. And so I go to my garage and I get the drill out and I'm going to help him for a few minutes, and then he's going to do these projects, and we're taking this banister off the wall and I start with my drill, the first screw, and it comes halfway out, and then the drill just stops. And I'm like, oh no, it's broke. He says, no, your battery's dead. And I said, well, at least I have batteries. Like, you ever tried to use one of these without the battery? And I actually did. I looked at him and I go, what are we going to do? And he says, well, I have a screwdriver. It just will take longer. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how those things work. So we spent the next few minutes, doing it the old-fashioned way because the battery was dead. The drill didn't work. And we did put on the charger and, like smart people, use it later. Have you ever had this happen to your phone? Right? Like that causes anxiety for some of us. You're like, oh no, I can't play the thing, or I can't check what if someone's dying and I could save them through my phone when they called me? Like, what's going to happen? My phone doesn't work. Oh no, the worst. Anybody go out to start their car like recently and the battery's dead on your car? Oh my goodness. I don't know if it's worse here when it's cold or in Phoenix when it's hot. I've had batteries die in both places. But that's what happens, right? Like, this is a picture of not just drills and cell phones and cars. Life drains us. We get drained, don't we? You know what's worse than a dead phone or a dead drill, a car that won't start? It's when your soul is dead. And friends, here's the reality. I'm going to save you a whole lot of time and heartache. I could literally give you hours and hours of information and facts. All of the studies, all of the stats say that we are a bunch of people walking around with dead batteries. We're not fully charged. We're just doing enough to get through this day to do the next day. Anxiety, depression, all of it, distraction, restlessness, sleep, use of alcohol, drugs, all kinds of things, illegal and legal. They're all-time highs. We are a bunch of dead, drained souls living life. Life to the full, what Jesus said, that's hardly us as a group. What we have is full life. Like, our lives are full. We're super busy. And that fullness is draining my spiritual battery, my emotional, my psychological batteries, and yours too. Look at what God says through the Hebrew prophet Isaiah many, many years ago. He says, do you not know, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He's saying, God made this. He will not grow tired or weary. That's good. God's battery is not drained. His understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary, increases the power of the weak, even youths, even when we're young. He says we grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord, will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagle. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah is saying this at a time where most people think that when this part of Isaiah was given to the people, they lived in exile in Babylon. They lived in a different place in a different time, and they're just like stressed out to the max. It's not just spiritual weariness. They were enduring physical weariness. And God gives them strength. Isn't that the picture of what you want in your life? To soar like an eagle? They don't look anxious. They look awesome. Isn't that what you want? Life to the full? That's what I want. So how do you keep the battery charged? It's what we all want, and it's what very few of us have figured out. Jesus gave us the recipe, I believe. He said it very straightforward, actually. Matthew, one of his followers, an eyewitness to this conversation, records it in his gospel. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened." This is Jesus speaking. "And I will give you," what's it say? "Rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I am gentle and humble in heart. You'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." That's what Jesus says. He says the way to find rest is to do what he says. See, yoke, he uses the term yoke. I don't know if you know what a yoke is. It's not the middle of your egg that you're going to cook in the morning. Or you're going to go buy at Brandy's or wherever you buy eggs. This is a picture of a yoke. These are two animals, cows, obviously. And a yoke is that wooden piece in the middle, the ropes. Taking the power of these two animals, cows, ox, like hippopotamuses, whatever you want to use, some big, strong animals. You put a yoke on them. One animal, two is even better. And the farmer would have a plow behind here, and the animals be controlled and directed by this yoke, this piece of wood, and these ropes would plow the field. I mean, you all just did this weekend in your gardens at home, right? You're going to do it in the spring, right? Everybody have one of these at home? No? Okay. Me neither. This is what Jesus is talking about. He's saying there is a way that he wants to direct you. That he wants to make you productive and show you where to go that works. He's telling you the cure and telling me the cure of being tired and weary. He has the cure for a drained battery. It's the path that he lays out. See, in the times of Jesus, this is how it worked. This is what the people listening that day as he spoke may have understood that you and I don't. Like, we can look at a picture of some cows, some oxen, and go, oh, that makes sense. We've seen like old movies or PBS specials on farming, and this is how they did it. Now we own tractors, and that makes sense. What you may not realize is what Jesus was really speaking about was how a rabbi worked. You see, a rabbi, a teacher, in his time would go approach young men. Every Jewish boy's dream was to be the student of a rabbi and maybe eventually become a rabbi himself. Because that's actually a lot easier job than driving oxen or fishing or all the other, right? They wanted to do that, and they wanted to honor God with this. So a rabbi would come and would take his students, his disciples, and teach them his yoke, his interpretation of how God wanted us to live life. That's what rabbis did. They read the ancient Hebrew scriptures and said, here's how I think we're supposed to live this out. And they would teach that to young men, and that teaching, that interpretation of how life is supposed to work was called a rabbi's yoke. The picture that we just saw. It would be as if you hired a life coach, like Tony Robbins. Anybody ever hire Tony Robbins to be their life coach? I didn't think so. Me neither. You know Tony Robbins, right? Motivational speaker, like excellence guru, like you read his books, you go to his seminars. Like pick any person who does this and replace that awesome picture with that picture in your mind, right? So like you hire a life coach or you read a book from an expert that says like 4 tips to being the best you ever. And because you paid for the book or you hired Tony Robbins, and if you actually hired him personally, you can do that. It's just really expensive. But because you spent all your money to hire Tony Robbins to tell you how to live life, you know what you would do? Whatever Tony Robbins told you to do. Right? Like you listen, you can go do like this new thing right now and see an advertising masterclass and all these famous people teaching you how to be successful for just 4 easy payments of. It would be as if you took Tony Robbins' yoke onto your life and said, well, Tony said I need to get up at 4 and do crunches every morning and I'll be awesome and I'll be better. And so you do that. And then Tony said to do this and that would work and do this and that would work. You would be taking his interpretation of what life is supposed to look like and applying it, taking on the yoke of a teacher. Your rabbi, whoever it might be, and you may not have a life coach or read self-help books. There's nothing wrong with those things. But here's the reality. You have a yoke right now. Friends, you do. You literally are living life with a set of interpretations guiding you, making your decisions, pointing your effort one way or the other. We stand here at the beginning of another new year, and you wear a yoke that just interprets for you how life is supposed to work. And the question is really this: whose yoke is it? And maybe more important, is it working? Or is it the reason we're always drained? Is Jesus your life coach? Is your life more defined by the fear that is rampant in our culture, maybe from the media, whatever it might be, the politics of the other side, your own desires and cravings, your need to make someone else happy and get their approval? For some of us, the need to be needed. That's our yoke. That's what makes all of our decisions. The fear of conflict, the need for accomplishment and adrenaline looks so virtuous. It's a yoke determining your decisions. What is it? The desire to have great kids, a perfect relationship, lots of money. What is driving your decisions? What is pointing your effort? Because that is your yoke. And is your current yoke working? Or is it why we're all drained? Whose interpretation of life have you been trusting? See, when Jesus says he has a yoke, he's literally saying, I have an interpretation of life. I have a system. And my system is better than the other systems. Everything we do as a church, every single thing we do is to simply help one another follow Jesus. That's it. Because he has the interpretation of life that we all need. Because he created it. He's the one that told Isaiah to say what we read earlier. The creator of life doesn't grow weary, even young men do. And when we do life his way, we soar like eagles, we run, we don't grow weary, we walk, and we never faint. We are here to help one another follow Jesus. He invites us to take on his yoke. So we don't talk about things like what Garrett mentioned earlier with Rooted, because we want you to be busier and like explode for more stress. Right? That's never our goal. But we know, I know, many of us know, 400 plus of us know and experience that it is the best thing you can do for 10 weeks. It starts in February. Just think of it this way. When the Super Bowl ends, Rooted begins. February 3rd. Life groups. Christy and I, we're really busy people. We really like our own time and space. We're in a life group. We make margin. We make this happen because it's important. It's part of what Jesus calls us to, is doing life with other people. How you use your time is so the issue of the day. And we're saying no to the greatest things God has for us because we said yes to some good things. Friends, it's time to say no to something good so that you can say yes to something great. Serving, we have to become a church in which we all serve 1 hour a week and we worship together 1 hour a week. There's just no other way to do what God's called us to do. That's Jesus' yoke, to serve, to help others. How do I stay charged? There's some very practical things. This is just the beginning of several weeks talking about what this looks like. What are the practices? What are the individual areas of my life? So we just want you to be here every weekend. Some of us, this is like a very normal thing. Some of us, it's not. It's very infrequent. And I would just say, be here for 1 month. Just be here for the month and see what God does with that. Would it help you be more charged? I think it would. You're going to learn things that you've never thought about, you've never heard before. To be more available to follow Jesus is the second. What I mean by this is maybe it's time to start clearing some space in your calendar. Did you start like some new goals or like just found your old goals from like 2010 that you never got to? Said, hey, then might as well do it now. It's 10 years later. You made some space. Did you go to the gym this week? Some of us are like New Year's resolution gym people, and like you made space for that. You got up early Friday. Maybe you'll do it again. Maybe not. But what are you going to do to make space, to be available to follow Jesus? If you want to be fully charged, start making the space. Be more available to follow Jesus, whatever that looks like for you. And maybe what it means is just spend time reading your Bible and prayer and reading. I would say if you have a reading plan that you started, like a read through the Bible in a year or something like that, do that. But if you didn't start that already, it's 3 or 4 days in. Read Mark. Mark's gospel, Mark's biography of Jesus is the place to start. If you already have one, I'm not trying to add to it. But if you miss the start of the year, getting back into the Bible and God's word, read his word. That's going to help you stay fully charged. Just a few minutes a day, you read the whole book of Mark during this first month of the year. And lastly, would you pray? Pray that we would have this incredible privilege of seeing 125 people being baptized. Because those of us who are like New Year's resolution gym people, like you're going to make friends and see like the people you saw last January there. Like you can invite them to church. You can start praying on the treadmill and go, God, what is it you want to do? How can I be a part of this? And he will use that to fill you up in ways you can't even imagine. Could you be here this week, this month, and start making yourself more available to follow him, eliminating things from your life that you don't need to do, reading Mark's biography, praying this audacious prayer, that we would see this happen. Jesus is, as the song it said that we sang a few minutes ago, he is the waymaker, the miracle worker. And some of us are so drained and so tired and weary, not just because it was just the holidays, but that's just how we've been living life. He can work a miracle in your life. He's the promise keeper, the light in the darkness. You and I can keep fully charged when we live life the way Jesus taught us to live it.